Jason Statham kicked out of a luxury car dealership for looking too poor, but what happens next will leave you speechless. Watch as a simple act of kindness uncovers a mind-blowing secret, sparks a global movement, and delivers a twist no one saw coming. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment if this story touched your heart. The roar of the black SUV echoed as it pulled into the glistening lot of Harrington Motors, an exclusive luxury car dealership nestled in the heart of Beverly Hills. The building's glass walls shimmered under the California sun, showcasing vehicles most people only saw in magazines: Bugattis, McLarens, Rolls-Royces, and Bentleys, all resting like royalty on a polished showroom floor. And there, amidst the sea of affluence and ego, stepped out a man dressed in plain jeans and a black t-shirt, the very image of understatement. He wore a faded baseball cap low on his brow and moved with a quiet, measured confidence. Nobody recognized him at first. To the untrained eye, Jason Statham was just another guy, maybe a personal trainer, maybe a stuntman, maybe someone's bodyguard. He didn't carry himself like a celebrity, and he certainly didn't dress like one. He walked past a parked Rolls-Royce Cullinan, gave it a glance, but didn't stop. He wasn't there to gawk. He wasn't there to be seen. He was there for something else. Something quiet. Something personal. Jason had always liked cars. Not in the red carpet, let me show off my $1 million garage kind of way, but in the way a craftsman appreciates tools. Growing up in working-class London, cars were dreams on wheels, and now that he had the means, he still valued the engineering, the precision, the soul of a good machine. But today was different. Today he wasn't there for himself. He entered the dealership with a soft push on the chrome glass door. Immediately, he was greeted not by warmth or curiosity, but by cold judgment. A sharply dressed man in a navy suit, polished to the point of reflection, approached him with a look of restraint, like he'd just smelled something slightly off. "Can I help you?" the man asked, already assuming the answer was no. Jason tilted his chin. "Yeah, I'm looking to speak to someone about the Veyron. You still got the matte black one?" The salesman's eyes scanned Jason's attire like a scanner app on his phone. "The Bugatti? That's a $2.5 million car." Jason nodded slowly. "I know." The man smiled tightly. "Do you, though?" Jason let the comment pass. He'd dealt with this sort of thing before, more times than he could count. He knew exactly what the man saw. A middle-aged guy in off-the-rack clothes, no entourage, no gold chain, no Rolex screaming for attention. In Beverly Hills, that made you invisible. "I'm not wasting your time," Jason said calmly. "Just need a look inside, maybe a test drive." The man's smile turned condescending. "Sir, with all due respect, our test drives are appointment only, and they're only offered to qualified buyers." Jason raised an eyebrow. "And how do you qualify someone? Based on what they wear?" The salesman chuckled dryly, not bothering to hide his irritation. "No offense, but people walk in here every week trying to pose, take selfies, pretend they belong. This isn't a photo op. If you're serious, come back with a bank letter." Jason took a slow breath, looking around the floor. No one else was being treated like this. A young man in a designer suit was being fawned over next to a Porsche 911 GT3. A woman in heels was sipping complimentary champagne, while a rep described the features of an Aston Martin. But Jason? He was invisible. "Right," Jason said finally. "Didn't mean to trouble you." He turned, ready to walk out. But then the unexpected happened. Another voice entered the scene. "Hey, wait a second." It came from deeper inside the showroom. A younger employee, maybe in his early 30s, had seen what had transpired. He walked over, looking uncertain. "Are you Jason Statham?" he asked hesitantly. Jason gave a modest shrug. "Yeah." The younger guy looked stunned. "Dude, the transporter? Snatch? Fast and Furious?" "Man, sorry, I didn't realize it was you." "Mr. Statham, we'd be honored to show you anything you like." The older salesman stiffened. "You know this guy?" "This guy?" The younger one laughed. "He's one of the biggest action stars in the world." "You seriously didn't recognize him?" The senior salesman turned red, but didn't back down. "Still, policies are policies. Doesn't matter who someone looks like." Jason smiled faintly. No harm done. But the room was watching now. Phones had come out. A couple of people started whispering. Jason was no longer invisible. I'm not here for a flex, Jason said, more to the crowd than to the man. Just wanted to get a car for someone special. Not even for me. Just a gift. The young employee leaned closer. Who's the car for, if you don't mind me asking? Jason looked out the window. A kid. Name's Elijah. Been through hell. Foster care, surgeries, whole 9 yards. I promised him when he beat cancer, I'd give him the ride of his dreams. The entire showroom went quiet. The older salesman's voice softened. I didn't realize. You didn't ask, Jason replied, still calm. Before anything else could be said, the dealership's general manager, an older woman with silver hair and an air of quiet authority, walked onto the floor. She must have seen the commotion from the security monitors. Mr. Statham, she said, extending her hand warmly. Please accept my apology. This is not how we treat guests here. Jason shook her hand. No need for apologies. Just people doing their jobs, right? The young rep interjected. We'd love to show you the car. Or any car, honestly. Jason nodded. Appreciate that. But now I'm not so sure I want to buy from here. The words hit like a hammer. Everyone went silent again. The general manager's expression turned serious. Let's talk privately, she said. Please. Jason glanced at her and after a pause, nodded. All right. They walked to her office. The glass door closed behind them. Inside, the air shifted. The manager didn't waste time. Look, she said, I know that salesman. He's old school. Comes from the era when people judged others by how they looked. But I want you to know, we're changing. Slowly, maybe too slowly, but we are. Jason leaned back in the leather chair. You don't need to convince me. Like I said, I'm not offended. Just disappointed. I get that, she said. But I also want to make this right. Jason looked thoughtful. Then here's the deal. Let me bring Elijah here. No cameras, no press. I want him to walk in and choose for himself. And I want him treated like a king. The manager smiled. Done. Jason stood up, and as he shook her hand again, he added, one more thing. Let him think the car's from you. She blinked. What? Jason smiled. Because real heroes don't care who gets the credit. And yet, just when it seemed the story was settling into an inspiring conclusion, just when the lesson had been learned and the moment salvaged, the real twist, the one no one could have predicted, was waiting just around the corner. Because when Jason brought Elijah to the dealership 3 days later, everything changed. Not just for the boy, but for the entire world. 3 days later, the lot at Harrington Motors looked much the same. Glass gleaming, luxury vehicles polished to blinding shine, and employees dressed like Wall Street brokers. But something beneath the surface had shifted. Quiet conversations had circled among the staff. Words like Statham, Elijah, and mistake hung in the air like fog. The older salesman, the one who dismissed Jason out of sheer prejudice, had since been pulled from the floor and reassigned to back office work. He wasn't fired, but the message had been clear: change or be replaced. That morning, Jason's matte black SUV pulled into the same parking spot. But this time, he wasn't alone. From the passenger seat stepped out a thin boy of about 14. His eyes were wide behind a pair of oversized glasses, and his hoodie hung loose over a frail frame. But what he lacked in strength, he made up for in fire. He moved slowly, carefully, the kind of careful you only learn after years of hospital corridors and chemotherapy chairs. His face was pale, his scalp bare, but his grin was something alive and powerful. This place is massive, he whispered, gazing up at the shining dealership. Jason walked around the front of the car and gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. You nervous? Elijah swallowed. A bit. You sure we won't get in trouble for just walking in? Jason gave him a knowing smirk. Let's just say, I've already cleared it. He hadn't told Elijah what happened 3 days ago. No mention of the cold treatment. No hint of the humiliation. Jason didn't believe in passing bitterness down to the next person, especially not a kid who had already been through more than most adults. When they entered, the receptionist stood up instantly and smiled. Mr. Statham, welcome back. Jason nodded. Morning. And this must be Elijah, she added, leaning down to eye level with the boy. We've been expecting you. Elijah looked startled. You have. Jason winked at him. Told you. As they walked into the showroom, the transformation was evident. The younger salesman from before was waiting by a silver Bugatti, clearly briefed and ready. But the surprise didn't stop there. The entire showroom staff, including the general manager, had formed a quiet semicircle near the cars. Not in an intimidating way, but in a respectful, reverent sort of way, as if they were about to welcome royalty. Jason gently nudged the boy forward. "Elijah, they said you could pick anything you wanted." The boy's jaw dropped. "Wait, I thought we were just looking." Jason chuckled. "You've done enough looking in life. Today you choose." Elijah stood frozen for a second, stunned into silence. And then something changed in his posture. He straightened his shoulders and slowly began to walk. The staff watched in silence as he moved between cars, peering inside the McLaren, circling the Aston Martin, and touching the leather of a Rolls-Royce as if afraid to stain it with his fingerprints. Finally, he paused beside a sleek, deep-red Porsche Taycan Turbo S. "This one," he whispered, eyes full of wonder. Jason approached from behind. "That's an electric one. You sure?" Elijah nodded. "It's quiet. Doesn't roar or growl. It just moves, like a shadow." Jason smiled. "Good choice." The young salesman walked over, key fob in hand. "You want to sit inside?" Elijah's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He just nodded. The door opened with a smooth hiss, and the boy slid into the seat. His thin fingers gripped the wheel like it was Excalibur. For a moment, he just sat there, overwhelmed. And then, quietly, he said, "I never thought I'd sit in one of these. Ever." Jason crouched beside the door. Sometimes the world gives you what you never thought to ask for. After a moment, Jason stood and turned to the general manager. "You can wrap it up. Put a bow on it. But don't tell him who paid." She nodded with a tight smile. "Understood." But just as Jason was about to lead Elijah away so they could finalize things behind closed doors, a sudden voice rang out. "Hold on." It came from the far end of the showroom, near the entrance. A man had entered, tall, mid-40s, with salt and pepper hair and an authoritative presence that immediately commanded attention. He was wearing an expensive jacket, carried himself like someone who didn't hear no very often, and he was flanked by two people who looked like lawyers. The general manager turned pale. "Mr. Carruthers?" Jason squinted, not recognizing the name. The man walked briskly toward the Porsche, his face a mixture of disbelief and irritation. "Why is he in that car?" The room stiffened. "I'm sorry, sir. This is a customer," the manager began. But Carruthers cut her off. "That Taycan is mine. I reserved it last month. It's being detailed and prepped for delivery." A silence fell over the room. Jason turned to the manager. "Is that true?" She looked torn. "Yes, but we had a duplicate model ordered for you. The specs were nearly identical. The other was scheduled to arrive this morning." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Scheduled?" Carruthers stepped closer. "I don't care what's arriving. That one is mine. And I don't know who this kid is, but he doesn't belong in that car." Jason's jaw tightened. The words hit the boy like a slap. Elijah flinched, and his small hands slowly pulled away from the steering wheel. For a long moment, he just sat there in silence, staring straight ahead. Jason spoke carefully, dangerously calm. "Say that again." Carruthers smirked. "I said that kid doesn't belong in." He didn't get to finish. Because Jason stepped in so fast, the man had to stagger back. "That kid," he said, voice sharp as broken glass, "has fought for his life every single day for the past 3 years. He's braver than most men you'll ever meet. And he deserves everything in this world." Carruthers blinked, caught off guard. "You think a bank wire makes you special?" Jason continued, stepping even closer. "You think money makes you right?" Carruthers recovered quickly. "What I think is, you can't just walk into a dealership and give away someone else's car." Jason looked at the manager again. "Well," he asked, "was this car paid for?" She swallowed. "Yes, fully." "Then who owns it?" "You do." Jason turned to Carruthers. "Then it's not your car, mate." Carruthers glared. "This isn't over." Jason smiled faintly. "It is for you." But just as the man turned to storm off, muttering something to his assistants, the boy's voice floated from inside the car. "Wait." Everyone turned. Elijah stepped out of the Taycan slowly, walked up to Carruthers, and looked him square in the eyes. He was shaking, but he didn't back down. You can have the car, he said. If it's that important to you, you can have it. Carruthers stared, bewildered. What? You need it more than I do, Elijah said. Because people like you think stuff like this proves you matter. That you won something. That the world owes you because you can afford things. Jason opened his mouth to interrupt, but stopped. Something powerful was happening. I'm 14, Elijah said, and I've already learned that some things matter more than cars, or money, or pride, like kindness, and dignity, and people who show up for others when they don't have to. He looked back at Jason. I already won today. You can't take that away. And just like that, he turned and walked away, not broken, not beaten, but taller than when he entered. Jason watched him, stunned. Everyone else did too. Even Carruthers was speechless. For the first time in a long time, he looked ashamed. And then the manager stepped forward, her voice strong. No, that car was promised to Elijah. And I don't care what your last name is, Mr. Carruthers. You don't get to take that away. Carruthers blinked. You're making a mistake. No, she said. You did. He left, red-faced and rattled. And the showroom erupted into applause. But the day wasn't over. Not even close. Because Elijah hadn't just won a car. He hadn't just won respect. Something much, much bigger had been set in motion. And as the story of what happened that day began to spread, on phones, on social media, in headlines and interviews, Jason realized the ripple effect was just beginning. What started as a quiet visit to a dealership was about to become a global movement. By the time they left Harrington Motors, the sun was beginning to dip low over the Los Angeles skyline. The Porsche Taycan, now officially Elijah's, had been delivered to Jason's house where it would be stored until the boy got his full driver's license. For now, it was enough just to know it was his, that it was real. Elijah hadn't stopped smiling for hours. But Jason had gone quiet. The image of Elijah standing up to Carruthers, the way he'd spoken with calm power and clarity, that stayed with him. It reminded him of something, or maybe someone. They just finished a late lunch when Jason's phone began buzzing. It didn't stop. First it was a text from his manager. What did you do at that dealership? Phones haven't stopped ringing. Then came a call from his publicist. TMZ is running a piece on you. You're trending on Twitter and Instagram. Then a voice message from his agent. CNN wants a live interview. Now, call me. Jason frowned, unlocked his phone, and opened social media. There it was. Someone had filmed the confrontation in the dealership, the part where Carruthers demanded the Taycan and where Elijah offered to give it away. The clip had already gone viral. Over 14 million views on TikTok, shared by celebrities, activists, even politicians. The caption read, 14-year-old cancer survivor shocks billionaire in Beverly Hills dealership. Jason Statham stands by his side. Jason put the phone down and exhaled deeply. He hadn't done it for views. That was never the point. But now, it had taken on a life of its own. Meanwhile, across the country in New York, a morning talk show host played the video during a live segment. This, she said, gesturing to the screen behind her, is one of the most powerful things I've seen in years. A kid who's been through the worst of life, giving away the one thing he was finally gifted just to teach a grown man a lesson in decency. I don't care who you are, that's courage. In Chicago, a sports star reposted the video with the caption, "Real heroes don't wear capes. They drive electric." In London, a charity organization for children battling cancer reached out to Jason's team, asking if Elijah would like to become their ambassador. In South Korea, the clip made national headlines under the translated title, "Statham's act of humility moves the world." Within 24 hours, Elijah's name was everywhere. But here's where things got really interesting. Because Carruthers? He wasn't just some entitled customer. He was one of the senior executives at a massive multinational corporation, Trident Holdings, a company with a reputation for buying up real estate, media, and luxury brands. And the internet, being what it is, had already connected the dots. People started digging. Within hours, online communities had unearthed a long list of questionable business practices associated with Trident Holdings: evictions, layoffs, environmental violations. Suddenly, the face of the man Elijah had calmly stood up to wasn't just a rude customer. It was symbolic. A viral David versus Goliath. And David had won. Back in Los Angeles, Jason and Elijah were sitting on the patio of Jason's modest but tastefully designed home in the hills. No staff, no cameras, just two people, a cold lemonade, and the hum of cicadas in the bushes. Elijah looked up from his phone. "You seeing all this?" Jason nodded. "I'm seeing it." The boy was still scrolling. "Dude, there's memes of me." "Memes?" Jason grinned. "It's a weird world." Elijah paused, then looked serious. "You think I did the right thing? Giving it up?" Jason leaned forward. "You didn't give anything up. You gave something away. That's different." Elijah tilted his head. "Ow!" Giving up is when you surrender something because you're afraid or defeated. Giving away is power. It's choice. It's generosity. It means you had it, you owned it, and you chose to bless someone else, even someone who didn't deserve it. Elijah looked down at his hands. "I don't feel powerful." Jason pointed at his phone. "The whole world disagrees." There was a silence between them, but not an awkward one. The kind of silence that hums with respect. And then Jason's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video call request. From Oprah Winfrey. Jason blinked. "Okay, now it's getting weird." Elijah nearly spit out his drink. "You know Oprah?" Jason answered the call. Oprah's warm face appeared on screen. "Jason, I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all." She smiled. "I wanted to tell you personally. That clip? I cried. I cried. That boy is a miracle. I would love to have both of you on the show." Jason looked at Elijah. The boy's eyes widened. "You're asking us to come on?" "Oprah." She chuckled. "I think the world could use a little more of what you two are putting out there." Jason smiled. "Well, think about it. I'll have my team reach out," Oprah added. "And Jason, thank you. That wasn't just a moment. That was a message." The call ended. Jason put the phone down. Elijah just stared at him. "Dude," he whispered, "what is even happening?" Jason took a sip of lemonade. "You made the world stop and listen. That's what happened." 2 days later, everything exploded. Carruthers, now under fire publicly and internally, resigned from Trident Holdings. Stock prices wavered. Former employees began coming forward with testimonies. The company's PR department scrambled to control the damage. Meanwhile, Elijah and Jason appeared on Good Morning America. The host cried. The audience gave standing ovations. Donations poured in for childhood cancer research. Millions of dollars within 48 hours. And then came the letter. It arrived in Jason's mailbox by courier. Heavy paper, elegant cursive, a seal that looked strangely governmental. Jason opened it and read the first line. "Mr. Statham, your recent actions have come to the attention of the office of the President of the United States." He kept reading, and as his eyes scanned the final paragraph, he sat down hard. Elijah looked concerned. "What is it?" Jason turned the letter around and read aloud. "You and Elijah are hereby invited to a private ceremony at the White House, where the President wishes to recognize the integrity, compassion, and courage displayed in your recent public encounter. This event will also serve to launch a new national initiative on childhood resilience and ethical leadership. You have inspired a movement." Elijah's jaw dropped. "No way," he breathed. Jason nodded slowly. "Way." And so, the next chapter began. What had started as a routine visit to a car dealership, a moment where a man was judged by the clothes he wore, a day meant to simply bring joy to a child who had suffered, had now become the spark of something bigger. A global reminder that kindness is strength, that humility is power, that sometimes the people the world overlooks are the ones who end up changing it. But the biggest twist of all, that hadn't happened yet. Because when Jason and Elijah walked into the White House for that private ceremony, what they discovered inside would change both of their lives forever. Something no one could have predicted, not even Jason. The White House lawn was bathed in gold by the early morning sun, and yet, neither Jason Statham nor Elijah could shake the surreal weight of the moment. A motorcade had picked them up from the private terminal at LAX, complete with an escort that made Elijah's jaw drop and Jason raise an eyebrow. "This is over the top," Jason muttered under his breath as they passed a pair of saluting Marines. Elijah, practically bouncing in his seat, whispered, "Dude, I'm riding with Secret Service." I could cry. "Don't." Jason said with a smirk. Crying in front of trained killers might give them the wrong idea. The car pulled up to the south entrance, and as they stepped out, they were greeted not just by the president's chief of staff, but by the president himself, tall, silver-haired, charismatic, and surprisingly warm in demeanor. He extended his hand to Elijah first. "You must be Elijah. It's an honor." Elijah blinked. "You know who I am?" The president grinned. "Kid, the entire world knows who you are." Then he turned to Jason. "And you? Well, I'll admit it. I thought you were just a guy from the mechanic. Turns out, you're something else entirely." Jason nodded respectfully. "Appreciate that." They were led through the marble halls, past paintings of American history, and secret doors only whispered about in books. Staffers waved. Interns peeked out from offices. Everyone seemed to know who they were. It was like walking through a movie, only this wasn't fiction. They were shown to a private room. Not the press room, not a photo op setup, but a more intimate office with couches and a table covered in documents. A tray of pastries and bottled water sat nearby. A small group of officials entered quietly, including the Surgeon General and the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The president gestured for them to sit. "I'll get right to the point," he said, folding his hands. The video of what happened at that dealership, the grace with which Elijah handled that confrontation, your quiet support, the way it spread, it lit something we've been trying to spark for years. Jason looked skeptical. "What exactly are we talking about?" "A national initiative," the president said. "One that focuses on youth leadership, emotional intelligence, resilience, and dignity. A mentorship program. Real resources, not lip service. And we want Elijah to be the face of it." Elijah blinked. "Me?" Jason leaned forward. "He's 14. He's not a politician." The president smiled. "That's exactly why it works. Kids like Elijah aren't jaded yet. They haven't learned to fake it. When he spoke up that day, when he offered that car to a man who didn't deserve it, he wasn't reading from script. He was living what we keep preaching." Elijah looked down at his hands. "What would I even do?" "You'd speak. You'd meet other kids. Share your story. Not for sympathy, for strength. You'd show them what it means to rise. You'd help us build something." Jason looked at Elijah. The boy's face said it all. He was scared, overwhelmed, but he was also ready. Jason nodded. "If he wants to do it, I'll stand behind him." The president looked deeply at Jason. "We'd also like you involved, Mr. Statham. Not just because of your celebrity, but because of what you didn't do. You didn't make it about you. You stepped back and let the kids shine. That's rare." Jason exhaled. "Fine, but I don't do politics." "This isn't politics," the president said. "This is people." He handed Jason a folder. Jason opened it, skimmed the contents, a proposed schedule, foundation partnerships, projected reach, school programs across all 50 states. And then he saw it, at the very bottom of the last page. Inaugural event to be co-hosted by Elijah Raines and Jason Statham, in collaboration with the Raines Foundation for Childhood Resilience. Jason looked up. "Raines Foundation?" The president smiled slowly. "That's the twist." Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" "Elijah's mother left something behind." Jason turned to Elijah. The boy looked confused. "My mom." The president motioned to one of the aides, who handed over a second folder. Elijah's mother, Rachel Raines, filed for a nonprofit charter shortly before she passed. She wanted to start a foundation to help kids in foster care, especially those with medical conditions. The paperwork was never completed, but when your story went viral, someone from our office traced her name, made the connection. We checked the archives. He paused, looking directly at Elijah. "Your mom had a vision, and now, because of you and what you did that day, we have the momentum to finish what she started." Elijah's lip trembled. His voice cracked. "You're serious?" "We're already drafting the final paperwork. It'll be funded by private donors, the federal government, and yes, even a contribution from Mr. Carruthers." Jason blinked. "Carruthers? That can't be right." "Oh, it's right," the president said. "Public pressure, internal company backlash. He's turning over a new leaf. We're trying to, anyway, offered a multi-million-dollar donation to make amends. You gave him a mirror. He didn't like what he saw." Elijah wiped his eyes. Jason squeezed his shoulder. There were no words. That night, the story hit every major outlet. Jason Statham and teen cancer survivor joined forces with White House to launch National Foundation. Bully Boy becomes national icon of strength. How a dealership meltdown sparked a movement. But one headline stood out more than the others. It came from Time magazine, and it was just 3 words: the Elijah effect. Weeks passed. Elijah's health continued to improve. He began speaking at schools, sometimes in person, sometimes virtually. He didn't preach. He told stories about growing up in hospitals, about his mom, about Jason. He'd finish each talk the same way. You don't have to fight cancer to be brave. Sometimes bravery is just standing up, even when your voice shakes. Jason, true to his word, stayed behind the curtain. He gave interviews when asked, but always redirected the spotlight. The Reigns Foundation grew faster than anyone expected. By the end of the year, it had already reached over 1.2 million children in programs nationwide. It wasn't just motivational posters. It was therapy, scholarships, mentorship, real impact. And one day, in the middle of it all, Jason received a call he didn't expect. It was the dealership, Harrington Motors. The general manager's voice came through the line. "Mr. Statham, there's someone here asking for you. He says he owes you something." Jason furrowed his brow. "Who?" "Carruthers." Jason was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Put him on." A pause. Then the voice came through, less proud, more human. "Statham, I owe you an apology." Jason said nothing. Carruthers went on, "I was a jackass. You didn't have to humiliate me, but you did it with dignity. And the kid, he made me rethink my entire life. I've sold 5 of my cars, gave up a house in Monaco, and I'm working with the foundation now." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Working?" "I asked them to let me help. Not as a face, not as a name, just behind the scenes. Grant writing, logistics, the boring stuff, but feels good. For once." Jason thought for a second, then said, "You screw it up, I'll know." Carruthers chuckled. "I don't doubt it." They hung up. Later that night, Jason walked out to the garage where the Taycan sat, untouched for weeks. Elijah had once said it moved like a shadow. And now, Jason understood. It wasn't about the engine. It was about impact. Quiet, steady, unseen by many, but felt by all who passed through it. But the final chapter was still ahead. Because Jason had just received a letter. Not from the White House. Not from Oprah. Not from Carruthers. This one was handwritten. Old paper. Familiar handwriting. It was from Rachel Reigns, Elijah's mother. Jason's hand trembled as he opened it. And what it revealed would shake everything he thought he knew. About himself, about Elijah, and about a promise he made years ago that he didn't even remember. The envelope was thin, unmarked, but Jason knew the handwriting immediately. He held it in his calloused hands for a moment longer than he needed to, staring at the name on the return address. Rachel Reigns. A name he hadn't heard in over a decade. He took a breath, steadying himself. The house was quiet. Elijah was upstairs, reading. The world outside buzzed with interviews, invitations, and interviews. But in that moment, the past reached out and pulled Jason into something far more intimate. He sat at his kitchen table, unfolded the letter, and began to read. "Jason, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're reading this, then you found him. I can't say for sure how, or when, or why. But I knew, deep down, that one day, the universe would bring you back to him." Jason's heart stopped. His eyes darted down the page. "I didn't tell you everything when we were younger. I couldn't. You were chasing your dreams, and I didn't want to be the reason you stopped running. I never told you about Elijah, because I didn't want pity. I didn't want to trap you. I wanted to protect you both. But Elijah, he's yours, Jason." Jason's breath caught. His world tilted. He blinked, staring at the words, reading them again, then again, trying to make sense of letters rearranging his entire reality. "I found out I was pregnant right after you flew to New York to shoot your first big film. I wrote letters. I tried to call, but I saw you on television. Red carpets, action premieres. You were becoming you, the man the world knows. I didn't want to step on that. I figured maybe one day I'd tell you. But then I got sick, and then Elijah got sick, and time just slipped away like sand in a broken hourglass. I know this is a shock. I know I should have told you. But please don't hold it against him. He's got your eyes, your stubbornness, your sense of justice. And now, if you're reading this, you've already seen it. You've seen why I saw the moment I held him in that hospital room. He is light. And you are the guard who will protect it. Jason set the letter down, hands shaking, throat closed tight. He stood, pacing, his mind sprinting back through every conversation, every glance, every moment since they'd met. The resemblance, the instincts, the connection. It all made sense now. Elijah was his son. He walked upstairs slowly. His legs felt heavy. The house felt unreal, as though everything had become lighter, like a dream not yet fully formed. The door to Elijah's room was cracked. Jason pushed it gently. The boy looked up from his book, one of those space adventure novels he always devoured, and smiled. "Hey, you good?" Jason stared at him for a long, silent second. "You remind me of someone," he said. Elijah raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Jason sat on the edge of the bed, careful to keep his voice steady. "Your mom. She was special, strong, kind." Elijah nodded quietly. "She used to tell me stories about you. She said you were a good man. The kind who didn't want to be a hero, but became one anyway." Jason chuckled softly. "She said that. Yeah, and she said if I ever met you, I'd know it." Jason blinked. "Why?" "Because I'd feel safe." Jason swallowed hard. "Elijah," he began, "there's something I need to tell you. And I didn't know it until today, but it changes a lot of things." The boy tilted his head. Jason reached into his pocket and unfolded the letter. "Your mom left this. For me." He handed it over. Elijah read it silently. His hands trembled. His lips parted. When he looked up, there were tears streaming down his face. "You're my dad." Jason didn't answer with words. He simply nodded. Elijah's face crumpled into something indescribable. Pain, joy, confusion, release. "I thought I didn't have anyone left," the boy whispered. "I thought I was just someone you were helping because you felt sorry for me." Jason pulled him into a hug, tight, warm, unbreakable. "Not sorry," Jason said quietly. "Proud." They stayed like that, neither speaking, just breathing, holding each other in the quiet space between truth and healing. In the days that followed, the story took on a life even the internet couldn't have predicted. Not just because Elijah was a boy who'd beaten cancer. Not just because he'd stood up to a billionaire. Not even because he was the face of a national movement. But now, he was also the son of one of the most beloved action stars in the world. And unlike the movie twists that are manufactured for shock value, this one was real. So raw, so human, so unbelievably perfect. CNN headline: Jason Statham's real-life action role, fatherhood. BBC News: From orphan to icon, the secret bond that changed two lives. Rolling Stone: He reminds me of someone, Jason Statham, and the son he never knew. But Jason refused to turn it into a spectacle. He didn't sign new movie deals, didn't do late-night circuits. Instead, he focused on building the foundation, staying close to Elijah, and making up for the years neither of them knew they'd lost. They traveled together, went to schools, visited children's hospitals, spoke to kids whose names would never be in headlines. And every time they stepped into a room, they brought one message: you matter. You're not alone. And even when the world doesn't see you, somebody does. 1 year later, the Reigns Foundation was now operating in 27 countries. A global campaign had been launched to combat childhood trauma. Jason and Elijah stood together at a United Nations event, addressing an auditorium filled with world leaders. Jason stood back as always. Elijah took the podium. He didn't read from a script. He just spoke. "I used to think I was invisible. I used to think people only cared about me when I was sick or when my story got shared. But the truth is, there are millions of kids like me. We don't need sympathy. We need someone to believe we can be something. I'm not here today because I'm special. I'm here because someone saw me and didn't walk away." The crowd rose to its feet. That night, back in their hotel room, Jason sat on the balcony with Elijah beside him. They watched the city lights blink like constellations of stories unfolding. "You ever think," Elijah asked, "about how one small moment changed everything?" Jason nodded. "All the time. Elijah looked at him. What if you never walked into that dealership? Jason thought for a second. Then someone else would have. Elijah laughed. You're just saying that. No, Jason said. Because people like you, the world can't ignore you forever. Elijah smiled and leaned back in his chair. The stars overhead didn't seem so far away anymore.